this is Michelle and welcome back to the Canadian History of Chronology channel. Today's episode, number 20, continues with the fall of New France, and the centerpiece of this episode is the Golden Age of Acadia and the lead up to the expulsion of the Acadians. Now, just as a reminder, I'd like to bring you back up to speed. In the last episode, we learned that the very vaguely defined Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 led the French to build the immense fortress of Louisbourg on Cape Breton Island. The construction started in 1719 and was unfortunately built using old ideas and old constructs and in a poor location. The settlement of Louisbourg itself, though, was a massive success. Okay, moving on. The Golden Age of Acadia runs from 1713 to 1743, a scant 30 years under English rule. Life was pretty good though. The birth rate was up and it was a time of peace, and the economy and religious freedoms were good. But after all, the Acadians were still a conquered people, and generally the conqueror would either deport or defang the conquered. Let's see. Several Acadians did go to Louisbourg to check it out, but that didn't go well. The Acadians were farmers from Nova Scotia, not fishermen, and the lands of Cape Breton were not suitable to their lifestyle. And unfortunately for the Acadians, the English blocked any attempts at a mass migration to other French-held territories. The Acadians were banned from building or importing boats, so if they wanted to leave, they'd have to walk. They were also banned from selling any property or livestock, so if they even could leave, they'd leave empty-handed. And why did the English do this? Well, if the Acadians did relocate to Louisbourg, these thousands of French Acadians would have created the largest and most powerful French colony in North America. The English couldn't allow that to happen. So since deportation was out, that left defanging them. The Acadians were not very militant and were not well armed, so the English figured all they had to do was to get the Acadians to swear an oath of loyalty to England. But the Acadians refused and would hold out for nearly 40 years. True, the Acadians did swear oaths to England on 2 previous occasions, but this time the English wanted them to swear before God. This they could not do. Eventually, though, after some negotiations, the Acadians did agree to take a conditional oath that included 1. The Acadians would never be required to take up arms against the French or the Micmacs. 2. They would be free to leave English territory at any time. And 3. The authority of the Catholic priests would be respected. But the English governor at the time was a crafty fellow. These 3 concessions were only given verbally, and no mention of them were in the written English language version of the oath. So from 1730 onwards, the Acadians would become known as the neutral French. During the future attack by the English on the fortress of Louisbourg in 1745, the Acadians didn't take sides or get involved. Nor did they ever lead a rebellion against the English. But their refusal to take an unconditional oath would come back to haunt them later. Unfortunately for the Acadians, in 1744, France and Britain were again at war, and Acadia once again was on the front lines. France launched a raid against Annapolis Royal, formerly the French settlement of Port Royal in Nova Scotia, but failed. And finally, by 1745, the French fortress of Louisbourg was finally completed, just in time, you could say. English warships, aided by New England volunteers, then captured the fortress in just 46 days, a humiliating defeat for France. The war eventually ended in 1748, and Louisbourg was returned to France, but this peace treaty was more like a ceasefire. Both sides were still making preparations for war. Now the English wanted their own Louisbourg, so in June of 1749, the English colonel, Edward Cornwallis, landed his 2,500 men in a natural bay called Chebucto by the Micmacs on the seaward facing coast of Nova Scotia. As Cornwallis's title was Lord Halifax, the city came to be called Halifax, and the capital was moved from Annapolis Royal to here, and he was made governor. By this time, the English and French were countering each other, fort for fort and outpost for outpost. Thousands of Protestant settlers, mostly English and German, were brought in by the English in hopes of countering the number of Acadians. The fishing village of Lunenburg was settled in 1753 almost entirely by what were called at the time foreign Protestants, namely Swiss and German, making it an unofficial New Germany. You may remember from the last video that France claimed that the Treaty of Utrecht did not include what is now known as New Brunswick, and only a narrow strip of land separates New Brunswick from Nova Scotia, so the French and English built opposing forts here. The French built Fort Beauséjour, and the English built Fort Lawrence. Fort Lawrence was not named after the river, but after its founder, Charles Lawrence, who would later become governor of Nova Scotia. In 1755, Lawrence sent Robert Monckton to capture Fort Beauséjour. Monckton, with the help of New England volunteers, captured the fort while local Acadians again remained neutral. Maybe the Acadians thought that these actions would show them off in a good light to their English overlords, but it didn't. Now the English could turn their attention to dealing with their unloyal Acadian subjects. Well, that's it for the short history of the fall of New France, Part 3. In summary, we learned that the Golden Age of Acadia ran from 1713 to 1743, just 30 years, and that they were considered as the neutral French by the British, and they swore an oath to God not to take up arms against the English or to take sides in a conflict. We also learned that the French fortress of Louisbourg was captured by the English, as was Fort Beauséjour on the New Brunswick border. Now please stay tuned for the next episode, episode 21, The Fall of New France, Part 4, where we delve into the expulsion of the Acadians. Now remember, at any time, feel free to leave comments or questions below, and I'll do my best to respond to them all. And please, be a true Canadian and be polite. And if you like this content, please subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. And hit the bell if you'd like to be notified of any new content. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.